So welcome aboard, everyone. My name is Chris Sarsky. I'm one of the consultants with the ARPDC Consortia. I work almost exclusively with CARC and with NRLC, so North and Central Alberta, but kind of travel all over wherever we need support and whatever we need to be working on. So some of you know me from math and some of you know me from science because I am working with Ted Zeroni in science as well. So today we're going to unpack the math K-3. There's been lots already done for you. So you're not kind of starting this one from scratch and trying to make up a lot of things. There's been a lot of work already done because it was rolled out last year. And so you may be new to it, but there has already been a fair bit of resources put together for you. So hopefully that will alleviate your workloads that you have in getting started and make you feel a little bit more comfortable in the process. If you feel comfortable to ask any questions, please do so along the way. I'm not going to always be able to keep track of the chat box all the way as we go. So if you have any questions at all in that regard, if you can just unmute yourself and just say, I have a question. But if not, throw it in the chat and I will try and check over there every now and then and see where we're at. Okay, so let's carry on. So we have a number of courses, as you may or may not, depending on where you are in your teaching career, aware of, that have started already this year. So there's lots happening now from K to 6 that everybody's involved in. And then there are some optional implementations, such as we could be doing science 4 to 6, and lots of people are. And there are some in the French as well. And then some people are also doing the science 4 to 6. So it depends on where you are in your sort of pieces of rolling out and what grades you're working on that you might be looking. So here are the 4 things that I'd like to cover today. The first one will be sort of the architecture, and I apologize if you've already know this, but there's always some little pieces that you might hear the second time through. So just very quickly, not going to spend a lot of time on this, looking at what are the key pieces we want to pay attention to in those documents as we look at the architecture of our new math. And then just very briefly, I will not read it through, but just touching on what shifted. But again, all of the information I share with you today will be shared with you. So you get a copy of the slide deck as well. So you don't have to worry about screenshotting or anything. You'll get all of this, plus the recording, and then more. Then we're going to look at what are the contents of the new curriculum. So I'm going to give you some documents that we prepared last year and the year before. We had about 300 pilot teachers that worked with us in unpacking and giving feedback. And then I'm going to share these documents with you as we go through. All right, so let's start first with just the architecture of the curriculum. If you're used to the old math program, and this is your first time that you're experiencing the new one, you're used to seeing these documents. These were our documents from the previous curriculum that we have for K to 9. This is the front matter that you're looking at, and that front matter was quite long, but it also gave us lots of information about the processes, the philosophies, how we moved through from K to 9, sort of what the growth was over time. And so these documents, and there were a number of pages in the front, have been replaced with a common, just like before, a common front matter that you will find that we've embedded in what we call our year plan. So I will show you that later when I give you the document. I won't read this through, but there are some highlights in there because some people, when we did the pilot, said, you know, all the processes were laid out. There's no more processes or anything like that in the new curriculum. And the answer is, no, there is actually. We just need to really read through our new front matter and just identify the way it's been worded. All of our processes are still there. All the important aspects of what we want a student to be really good at in math and be numerate as a citizen are all identified in our front matter. So you're seeing some things highlighted in red, and I'm not saying these are the only things we should read, but they're just to highlight that, yes, the front matter of our new curriculum actually has those connections already made for us. So shared an understanding of symbols and procedures, looking at real life problems. I mean, that's always our goal, is do children see the math in the real world, and are they learning it from the real world perspective, right? We're seeing that we have arithmetic, algebra, geometry, statistics, probability. Those are pieces that are important in day-to-day living. Those are the important pieces that they're also going to learn as they go through our new curriculum. So that hasn't changed. We want to extend their thinking beyond personal experiences. We want them not to memorize. We want them to take what they've learned and apply it in a real world context and see that the math lives in a real world. It's not something that they learned in a 40-minute block in a classroom or came out of a book, but that they don't see the connection for. So the front matter is really laid out well in the way that we can find those pieces. We just need to take it through and read it. It's a quick read, it's about a 2-minute read, but it has powerful information in it. So I encourage you that if you haven't read it through yet, just do it the first time with a highlighter and then just kind of find those key rocks that you're finding in there that will kind of guide you in the philosophy of our new program. And sort of in the last pages of it, you see the same things. I need them basic number facts. I want them to be able to communicate. I want them to have different number systems because we'll take them from whole numbers, natural numbers, to whole numbers, to decimal numbers, to integers, and so on. So that progression, all those things that we're familiar with are still there. Okay, so I'll leave that to you to unpack. At the bottom of your document, you will find a statement that says, the learning outcomes in the mathematics kindergarten to grade 6 curriculum are intended to be achieved without the support of calculators. So we're really working on what are the strategies that a child has to unpack the math curriculum without just relying on a tool to do all of the thinking for them, right? So we want them to have good opportunities for strategies. So in some cases, specific algorithms are named, and we include those, but that doesn't mean that if you have a best practice that you've been doing all along, and it's a strategy that's worked with students all along, that we wouldn't share those strategies. So just to give you a little bit of a sense, as we've been already unpacking the grade 6 program, so we've already done K to 3 as far as providing sort of support in lessons and unpacking the year. We're now doing the same thing with 4 to 6. But when we kind of do our front matter in our conversations, we show how all these things are linking together. So I know you're not teaching grades 4, 5, 6, but I do want you to have an understanding of kind of how things are going. So when we did this just with K to 3, these would just be wrapped around in the center. But as we unpack the 4, 5, 6, we wanted people to be really clear on some of the connections that are much stronger than maybe they have been in the past. We've always had Division 1, Division 2, and we always have had linkages between any of the grades, strong linkages from moving from grade 3 into grade 4. We're finding that there are some definite concepts that live in the new grade 3 program that are exceptionally strong rocks that the students need to understand in order to be really successful in 4, 5, 6, and more so that the grade 4s need to unpack even deeper to be more successful in 5, 6. And some of those are linked directly to unit fractions that we talk about in the year. So that's one of the big concepts that we're sort of saying, you know, we recognize we're starting them very early, but we're really building the idea of that concept here in grade 3. And it needs to be strong for the grade 4s who are going to really strengthen the understanding and work with it in order for them to go into grade 5 and 6. Grade 4 is kind of in a unique position. They are in some cases the finishers of some of the things that happened up here in K to 3, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a minute. And then very much the starters and the carriers of transitioning 3 for 4 to build the students' knowledge for 5, 6. The new 5, 6 has some very strong linkages with the existing junior high curriculum that we have right now. So you'll find some things that were happening in grade 7, happening in grade 6 and grade 5, some items that very small ones that come from grade 8 and a couple from grade 9 that have been sort of integrated into some of these. So there are some definite shifts that are happening in what we're unpacking. And consequently, because we're unfolding multiple grades at the same time, we have to be cognizant that the children may arrive at our doorstep, depending on what grade I'm teaching and how many years your school has already been implementing the new curriculum. They may not have all of the skills that they need for a particular outcome in my grade. And so this is what you're seeing, the arrows at the top. We talked about it with pilot teachers, and then we've been talking about it last year, again this year, that there's bridging that needs to happen. I need to be very cognizant of what the new curriculum is saying for that grade previous to me, and what in theory would they come to me with if everything was perfect and they all had done all the work that they needed to do. Then I will have a good starting point for grade 3. What might I need to bridge? We recognize that last year was a new year for a lot of the schools, and it was their very first time. And so some of the teachers said, we did it, but we maybe didn't do it as well as we could have in the second time round, simply because the kids will have more of the new curriculum as they arrive at their doorstep. So we're treating this year as, think of it in terms of new. Definitely, if you're a grade 3 teacher, your grade 2's got the new curriculum last year, and they're going to be coming to you with definitely some knowledge and some transitional gaps already filled. But let's assume that maybe there are still some gaps. So for one more year, we're still talking about bridging. We're still talking about filling holes, definitely not as big as they were before. So again, in the old curriculum, we had our strand. At the top, we had our processes. We had what specifically we would cover in each of those areas. And it was even broken down into sort of what we call the learner outcomes, and the learner outcomes had sort of sub-bullets to them. Somewhat similar. There's a few changes, more changes in language and how it looks, but really we're still doing the same thing. Our new architecture, we no longer have strands in math. We don't have GLOs in language arts. We don't have topics in science. Everybody's using the same language. So again, if you've been doing it before, I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but there's some of you that are brand new and have not seen this yet. So we just want to back up and make sure everyone's on the same page. So organizing ideas are replacing strands in math. We'll have guiding questions. I'm going to unpack these for you, which are designed really for you, the teacher, to, when you're going to answer that question even yourself, that should help prompt your thinking about how you might plan your unit to answer that question. The learner outcome is the one that we're very familiar with. It's what we're going to make sure that the students are able to know and do, and this is what we're going to be reporting on. So how we're explaining to parents that yes, your child is meeting a particular grade level because they've been able to achieve that learner outcome. And then we're going to talk about the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures that are now replacing sort of those little bullets that we used to have underneath a learner outcome or a topic that was in our math. And then literacy, numeracy, and competencies, which are carryovers from our old curriculum that have not changed and that are from the existing, are in the existing ministerial order, that we are still to continue to do those from the 2013 ministerial order. We're just moving through on those, because the intent there was that a student who entered school in 2013 would graduate in 2030 fully versed and competent in those. So we'll unpack those a little bit more for you. Okay, I don't see any questions right up front, so I'm going to just launch into just unpacking the architecture of the new curriculum, and I will be sharing a document with you shortly in the chat box. So let's start with, first of all, the colors. Every one of them has their own color. Math is sort of that brownish orange color, green for science, blue for LA, and so on. So everybody has their own color, and that's all the way through the grades. So we don't have to retool our thinking. It's the same for every grade. And remember, we said no strands. I have it replaced by what's called the organizing idea. And the organizing idea is always the top line of those three colors. It's always the darkest line. And it always introduces what it is that we're going to be talking about, which organizing idea. In this case, whatever word comes behind it, in this case, it's number. That tells me I'm working on number, AKA what we call strand number. This is our organizing idea number. And it's a general statement that is made, and you'll notice that it's not broken, it's not stopping underneath each grade. It goes all the way across, in a lot of cases, right through all of the grades to grade 6. And then once we know what grade 7, 8, 9 looks like, we'll see if it carries on through there or if it's worded differently. But what it's giving you is a broad concept statement. So in this case, quantity is measured with numbers that enable counting, labeling, comparing, and operating. A very broad statement, very true. Quantity is related and is represented in those different ways. How I unpack that statement will be determined by what my specific pieces will start to narrow down to in my grade. So if you think of an inverted triangle and the wide base of the triangle being my organizing idea, where big concepts that live across the whole grades, all the grades, like quantity is one of those, it lives there. And then as I try to unpack quantity specific to my grade, I start to narrow it down by getting a guiding question that's about my grade, by getting a learner outcome that gets even more specific for my grade. And then I get into the rows and the columns that are below that, which are called the cusp, that's very specific for my grade. So we start from a broad statement and work our way down to more specificity. So the guiding question is the next line. Oh, sorry, I'll finish this one first. The organizing ideas. So the organizing ideas, you'll see that I have number, I have algebra, geometry. So some of them are new terms, new titles, but really they're still covering the same topics that we were covering before. So some of our shape and space has been pulled apart into geometry specific as its own title. We have measurement that's built into from there as well. So all these different components that you're seeing as organizing ideas are now identified as they go through the different grades here. And as I see them, you'll see some of them go all the way through to grade 6. Some of them don't start until grade 3, for example, algebra. And then some of them are finishing. And remember I said grade 4 is kind of the finisher, is a little bit in a different world there. So in this case, they are the finishers of time. We start time in kindergarten, it goes all the way to grade 4, and then what happens is it's done. And so those perfect world of grade 5, 6 teachers, you can assume that kids have got that all down pat, and we can just adapt and start asking questions about it and integrating it because they've already covered it. Would there be some opportunities for review? Of course there would, especially in the early years that we're doing this, but that's kind of how we can see how these organizing ideas are following through. So those big rocks of number, geometry, measurement, patterns, those are still all the way through because those are the rocks of our and foundational pieces that we have in our math program. The guiding question, so it's informed by that organizing idea, the concepts that live up there, but really it's a question that's open-ended. And if I read it as a teacher and I think about, oh, how would I answer that? That's already specific to my grade. My grade has its own organizing idea. I see here on the spreadsheet, I have kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, and every one of them has their own organizing idea. However, as a teacher, if you read each of those all the way across, you see there are connections between them, how they actually progress as I start in kindergarten and go to grade 2 or grade 2 to grade 3 and so on. So that guiding question allows me then to just give some ideas of how the concept might now start to get broken down in my grade. It might help inform me as far as my planning is concerned, might even give me some wonders about, oh, I wonder how we might do this, we might do that. We go below that, the lightest of the 3 colors is the learner outcome, the one that we're most familiar with, everybody feels comfortable with because you've used it, that terminology over time. It still has to describe what the students will be able to understand, know, do, demonstrate. It's what I need to be able to say they can do so that, yes, they're meeting the outcome for my class or my grade. So it's also the piece that you're reporting on. So we are required to report on the learner outcome, not each individual cusp, not every line that's in the cusp. The learner outcome is collectively what we're saying they're meeting it or they're not meeting it. And it also will have very strong key concepts in it that we need to unpack. So again, it's taking that broad statement and really refining it even more for me as a teacher to find the key concepts that live in my world as a grade 1 teacher or as a grade 3 teacher, as a grade 6 teacher. What is it specifically that I'm needing to have to address? All right, and then below that, we see that we have the learner outcome. So that's right here. Okay, always that last line, the lightest color. And then below the learner outcome for each grade are 3 columns. The first column is called knowledge, second one, understanding, and the third one, skills and procedures. So let's unpack those a little bit more specifically. The knowledge one is the one that contains some pretty factual information that I need to make sure the students know and understand. So it might be facts, might be definitions, it might be rules, it might be symbols that I need to teach them. So it's that really factual foundational pieces that I need a student to understand. And so I'm always going to have surface, we call that surface level teaching. Surface is teach me the foundational pieces, the facts that I need to know. Because as a student, I can't get really wild and wonderful and deep and show you that I can integrate things and I can be combining concepts together if I don't have the factual foundational skills to do that. So this is always my starting place, is teaching me the foundational pieces. But I don't want to stop there. Okay, and I'm going to bring this up again, and we'll do this even more when we do assessments as we roll more sessions out on assessment. But if we just stop in this column and do nothing more than teach me the facts and just assess the facts, those are easy to assess. They're generally right or wrong, fill in a blank. Yes, they've got it. No, they don't have it. But that's the kind of assessment I want to check to see whether they have that basic understanding. But that hasn't really said, I understand how fact A, fact B, and fact C fit together. That's a different level. So once I start to combine them and show the relationships between each of those facts, then I really want to make sure that I have gone a little bit further. And that's the world of teaching that we want to live in. I need to teach the facts, but I want to move to the integration and the relationship level. That's the 80% of our teaching that we do. So in here, I might have statements that are giving me quite specific. So I see in here, it says quantity can be represented using objects, pictures, words, and numerals. So, I mean, it's telling me straight out, those are the things that I want them to be able to do. I want them to be able to demonstrate that they know quantity using different formats, right? So I need to show them those different formats. I need to show them what that is, first of all. Before I ask them any deeper level questions, I need to teach them those factual pieces. Okay, the middle column is actually the most important of the three columns because it actually ties the knowledge and the understanding skills and procedures together. It's a statement that's saying, do they have an understanding of this? And this is grabbing knowledge and skills and procedures, and can they demonstrate this? So again, it's contingent on the fact that I learned all of this, and I'm going to go over to skills and procedures, and I'm going to unpack that as well. But it isn't a checklist of the left, and it isn't a checklist of the right column. And just if I finish the checklist, yeah, taught those, taught that definition, went over here, did this, and then just because I did them, have I never taken the time to put them together and relate them and start giving them experiences where they would integrate them, then I'm really still staying at surface level, right? And the understanding is not a surface level. It is very much tie it together. What experiences, what real world connections do the students see to make that understanding very real for them? So it's a really important statement. Sometimes there's one statement, sometimes there's two, there could be three. Okay, and then the skill and procedures are those doing columns. Skills are doing. So the skills are generally identified at the beginning, recognize, represent, relate. And they identify what we want the students to do with that knowledge that we taught them. How do I want them to take the knowledge and show it to me and demonstrate it to me? What skills, strategies do they use? So those skills that are identified there are skills not just for you, the teacher, but they're also meant for the student to learn and to be assessed at. Do they know how to represent something? Do they know what it means to relate a number to a diagram? Okay, it shouldn't always be us telling them, I want you to look at a picture. I want you to find the number that matches to. We want them to use that terminology. We want them to become literate in those kinds of things. So we do want them to learn those verbs, and we want them to be assessed on those verbs. And whether you assess them within an entire sort of deeper transfer assessment, or whether you're doing it one at a time just to see how they know how to do it sort of formatively, that's always going to be your decision, and you need to decide how that best fits into the unit that you've designed. But again, these are the doing columns that tells the students what they're going to do. Typically, I find the verbs, the skill in here, but you're going to find skills sometimes in the learner outcomes, sometimes in the guiding question, and sometimes also in the organizing idea. So don't just fall into the habit of looking in the last column. Make sure that you understand how the skill and procedure links to anything else that's linked in the statements that appear above them. Now, for every learner outcome that we have, I could have multiple rows of knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures. And you'll often hear the word CUSP being used. All they're doing is using the letter that leads the beginning of each of these words. So KUSP, that's all it means, is the knowledge, understanding, skill, and procedure, often referred to as a CUSP. So a learner outcome could have this row of CUSPs, and then it might have another row right below it. And if it has another row right below it, it won't be the same things. It'll be a whole new understanding or understandings with a whole new set of knowledge and a whole new skill and procedure. But it still is linked to the same learner outcome. The learner outcome doesn't change no matter how many rows of cusps I have below it. It is still related to the same learner outcome. So we're just unpacking the learner outcome in stages and from different perspectives sometimes with the understandings. All right, we'll come back to that in just a minute. Let's look just in general terms, some of the things that might have shifted. So we're seeing some changes in spatial reasoning. So the current one, we sort of have a limited pieces that is provided throughout some of the grades. We're now seeing it when we look at spatial reasoning in particular, it's much more focused on providing starting points in the early grades so that I can transition them to deeper thinking in the later grades. And again, I'm not going to read this all through to you, but you should be aware of some of those shifts that are happening. Are there some things that are happening earlier? Yes, there are some things that are happening earlier. If we talk about fractions, for example, they used to just start at grade 3 very formally. Now we're starting, and I would even say, it says grade 1 here, but I would even say we start in kindergarten when we use the word share. If we say something can be shared out equally or not equally, I'm going to share something between you and me. If I am going to share cookies with you and you get one, I get one, you get one, I get one, that really is the start of fractions. I mean, you're dividing in equal components. We're not using the term fraction with them, but it really does start there. So in grade 1, we start with the terms halves. We talk with the word halves. I'm not concerned with 1/2. I'm not concerned with telling them about anything about a fraction. It's just where do they see halves in the world? And how does a half get represented when I talk about a half of a watermelon versus a half an orange? They're both a half, but do they look the same? And how are they different? So we have those conversations. And by the time they get to grade 2, they're talking about quarters in a verbal sense. Again, what's a quarter? How does that look different than a half that we talked about in grade 1? And then not until the end of sort of grade 2, we would talk about a little bit about different parts of wholes. And we're not interested again with denominators, common denominators. We're more interested in the relationship between numbers. So how does 1/6 get related? What does that mean? What's the relationship between them? Okay, so those are the kinds of shifts that are happening that we need to be aware of as we start unpacking that new curriculum. We also have financial literacy. In the draft version of the curriculum, financial literacy, the pieces of that were actually in the math curriculum. And then in the newer version, the version we're working off of right now, we moved that over into the health and wellness portion under financial literacy. You will find as we unpack things that there's quite an emphasis on that in the math curriculum in K-3. Teachers have been pulling it over, and so we made some deliberate and conscious efforts to actually integrate the two together. And again, I'll unpack that just a little bit more. But the fact that financial literacy is starting in kindergarten means that money can be used as a concept. I need to teach the concept of money because it's really hard to have a conversation about budgeting or anything in financial literacy, saving in my piggy bank. What am I saving if I don't even understand money? So I have to understand the money. I have to be able to recognize the money. But then we can also use money as a manipulative, right? I can say, can you find me 6 of the same things in coins? If they don't know their coins yet, regardless of the grade, and we could even say that in some grade 6 classes because they don't know the money. So can you find me 6 coins that look the same? And then as time goes on, I might be able to change that wording to, can you find me 6 nickels? Can you find me 6 dimes? Because now they know the names of them and they can actually identify them. And now I'm asking them to grab the ones. So I'm practicing identification and I'm using them as a counter at the same time. We could use them for skip counting. We can use them, all of those different components in math wherever possible. We don't want to just limit it to, did they memorize what the coins' names are and the values? And that's where it ends, all right? That's got to be much deeper than that for the financial literacy. And let's leverage it for all the math outcomes that we can cover at the same time. All right, so the main contents, we talked a little bit now. We've looked at sort of what some focuses are, some shifts are, and this comes directly off the new Learn Alberta site. So again, you can find that on there if you want to go into it more. But just sort of bulleted form, you can find your grade that you're looking at the screen right now and just kind of see what are the things that are kind of new in there and a little bit of a shift that we're going to. So these are the things that we're going to unpack. This is a very general statement. There are some deeper components to each one of those, which naturally will get unpacked as we start to plan and look at each of those organizing ideas. I've included the 4, 5, 6 so that you can kind of see progression over time and some of the things that have changed. And for some of you who might have been teaching a particular grade before, how that links to what's happening in K-3. So let's start with our very first what we call key documents that we're going to share with you and that you might use. I mean, some of these will be optional. They're all optional. You don't have to use any of them, but you may find them helpful to work your way through the first time. And then you can kind of park them if you don't need them in the future. So just a reminder that the organizing idea are replacing the word strand. So every time I say organizing idea, it's like thinking of a strand. And these are the names of our organizing ideas that we want to pay attention to as we unpack each of our grades. So if I were to go into the documents in New Learn Alberta and pull off the curriculum document in the printable one. So in other words, there's 2 different versions. This is the printable one where I have multiple grades on one page. And that's a real advantage because especially when you were new to the curriculum, it's good to be able to see how is what I'm teaching going to inform the next grade? Like where's the connections between what I'm doing and the grade that's coming after me? Or vice versa, what am I doing this year that connects to the grade next year? But more importantly, what should they have learned in the previous year? What, if it's brand new to them, what would they have missed coming to my grade? I'm assuming they would know it teaching my outcome. So I might have to go back and do a little bit of bridging. Now, when we were first working with the pilot teachers, so when it very first drafts came out, and we were working with the teachers then, the documents that we had look like this, exactly the same as you would get from New Learn Alberta now. But we had some frustrations because we were finding that sometimes a learner outcome, maybe not necessarily in primary, but could be, had multiple cusps below it. So sometimes there would be 3, 4, 5, maybe sometimes more. And when we started to unpack other courses, we found the same thing. And so as we were working through Zoom links in teams of teachers working to unpack, there was always the conversation, where are you? Like, what page are you on? I don't know where you are. So we'd have to read some of the pieces that were in here just to clarify whether everybody was at the same place. So we very early on decided that we maybe might be easier if we could somehow identify each of the rows, not change them, but just identify them so that if you get on a Zoom or you're working in a CLC with another group of teachers, you can say, we're all going to work on this. And if we could identify what this is, then we'd all be on the same page, no misunderstandings of what that would be. And that's how we came to what's called the numbered outcomes document. We simply numbered the outcomes and actually sort of broke out what the numbering might be for a multiple set of rows of cusps. So it's exactly the same document that you find on New Learn Alberta if you go and download it, only we just put a number in there for reference purposes, and that's really all it is. So let me show you what I'm talking about if you haven't seen it, and I will share this in the chat box with you right away so that you can download it and save it to your computer. So here is it, and it's a little bit larger for you to see. Here's the organizing idea. Here's the guiding question. I'll use kindergarten as an example. And then I see that I have my kindergarten one says, children investigate quantity to 10. And when I actually look at this in the actual document on New Learn Alberta, I see this, I see the understanding that's right below it, but I will also find there's another row of cusps right below that. And so those would be those ones I was talking about where there was confusion about where we were. So what we did is we gave it a number. We did not change the order. Everything that is exactly the same as it would be if you went to New Learn Alberta. This is the very first outcome that appears in kindergarten in number that was identified by New Learn Alberta or Alberta Education. So we didn't change that. So all we did was we gave it a numbering system that looks like this. The very first thing that you'll see, there's a K. They're the only ones that don't have a number, obviously. K stands for kindergarten. If I'm grade 1, there'll be a 1. If I'm grade 2, there'll be a 2. If I'm grade 6, there'll be a 6. The whole thing has been done for all the way up to grade 6. So each one of these has an identifier by the grade in front of it. The next one will be a letter, and that letter, and I'll show you where the legend is for the letters in a minute. The letter tells me which organizing idea am I working on. So number was the first one. So N stands for number. And so kindergarten, number. This is the very first learner outcome. So that's what the number 1 represents in number as it appeared in the document that was presented by Alberta Education. So 1 stands for first learner outcome, which is children investigate quantity to 10. If there is a decimal behind it, and there's not always going to be one, but if there is a decimal, what that tells you is, in fact, this learner outcome does have more than 1 row of cusps. So this would be, for example, KN 1.1. Point 1 is the first row of cusps. KN 1.2 is the same learner outcome, but here's the second row of cusps. If there was a third row, there'd be a 1.3. If there's a fourth row, there'd be a 1.4. So that's what we did to help find which row we were working on as a referent only. And if you don't like the numbered outcomes, you don't have to use them. You're more than welcome just to download one that doesn't have the numbers on it. But this is what we're using it for reference purposes. And that's what you will see throughout the document. So here you'll see KN 1.2. So where we had your original document look like this, there's no break in between, it just goes together. This is where we inserted just another brown line for you to say, just a reminder, your learner outcome never changed. Here's what the wording is. And the 1.2 tells you you're on the second row. If this was the third row, there'll be the same repeated learner outcome with a 1.3 and so on. It works like this in math, it works like this in science, it works like this in health and wellness. We numbered language arts. So we actually went through and numbered them because the feedback we've gotten has been overwhelming in the sense that people say, this is so much easier for me to have a conversation with and to reference, or to put in my book, I can just say that I'm working on 2N 1.4. And so they know exactly where they are in the document. Okay, so this is how this reference works. So I'm just going to grab the link here. I'm going to put it in the chat box. And if you can grab it from the chat box, this will be it's already posted on the website as well, but this will save you a little bit of looking. And you can load it to your computer and save it. So I'll just give you a second to go ahead and grab that. Now, once you've got it, what I would encourage you to do is open it up and find your grade. Just locate wherever you are on your grade. And just make sure that it makes sense to you on how to find your way through the numbered outcomes. If you have any questions, just throw them out now or throw them in the chat box. And I will go through at the end. If anybody has any questions, I'll pause again before we leave and ask any questions. So you have this. Now, if you're going to use this, what I would suggest you do, what we have found works exceptionally well, is running it off on 11 by 17 paper. So that big ledger size paper, because if you're going to use the one that has multiple grades on it, then you also gives you the chance to see across what's happening. But it also, with the larger document, lets you go through and just keep some records on there as you're going along throughout the year. You don't need to print off everything to grade 6 because you're not all teaching that. So print off what you need and then just stop there. But you have the entire document there and able to look at it. Now, there's one piece you might notice as you're scrolling through that some gray comes up in the document. And so if you remember what I said to you is a number of the teachers have already said, well, if I'm teaching the money and I'm going to use money for adding and subtracting, and you'll even have specific skills that are stated, you know, being able to identify money, be able to do it in dollars and cents, being able to add money. So if it's being referenced as a skill already, the teacher said, why don't we just have these right side by side? And a number of the school boards are actually even reporting the first financial literacy components in with their math at the same time, because we're just strengthening the skills of both math and financial literacy at the same time. So what you'll see there is we've included what the kindergarten students need to know for money, because the grade ones feed off of what the kindergarten students already would know from money, as do the grade twos feed off. So of course, if I'm a school that hasn't implemented anything and I'm a grade 3 teacher, then I need to be aware of right back in kindergarten, what is it they know about money? And what did they learn in grade 1 and what did they learn in grade 2? We do a little bit of backpedaling a little bit, still using it as a tool, but also learning the components so that I can have that budget conversation, that sharing, that donating, the saving in my piggy bank, what am I saving for, a conversation. That's important. So you will see gray, and we included all of them again for the grade 3, 4, 5, 6, because as we're finding with the grade 4, 5, 6 children, a lot of them don't know the money, they don't know the coins, they can't even identify them. So we're having grade 6 and 5 and 4 go back and look at where would I start? What did the kindergarten teachers do? So we're just doing a little bit of back and forth until everybody's up to speed and everybody feels comfortable with it. So that's why you're seeing the gray in there, but it comes from your phys ed and wellness. That's the cover or the color of phys ed and wellness. Okay, so we don't have a ton of time today, so I won't spend time pausing for you to go through, but you should be able to find your grade, look at the numbering outcomes document, and then we can answer any questions as we go along or at the end. Now, I also mentioned at the beginning that competencies, numeracy, literacy progressions were carryovers from the last ministerial order, and they are still expected. So at the time that they were introduced, the competencies were seen as those real world skills. Those are the things that we do day by day in our life skills that are critical for people to be good citizens, to be good functioning people. And so we all know that we problem solve. We all know that we have to do critical thinking. So the point was, do children know that they're doing problem solving? Do they know that they're doing critical thinking? So those were introduced in 2013 with the intent that each year, every teacher would be taking those competencies and infusing them into their grades and into their classes that they're teaching. And then they would be being quite intentional about, that we have a problem-based learning that we're going to work on for the next 3 days. And it's really going to focus on our skill of being good critical thinkers. So what does that really mean? So teaching them what that means and identifying for them, where is it in this activity that I'm doing that's critical thinking, so that they learn to identify that. And the intent was that a student who entered school in 2013 and graduated in 2030 would be fully versed, would know their strengths and weaknesses, would know where they excel in each of those 8 areas of competencies, which in theory, the belief was that everything that we do at this point or by 2030 would be competency-based. And I can assure you that we're already there. There's very few jobs that you would apply for that aren't based on competencies. So students need to know this. This isn't something that we kind of sort of leave to their own devices to figure out, or just assume that the older they get, they must know what it means to be a critical thinker and that they can identify it, because that's not necessarily the case, not even necessarily the case with high school students right now. So we really need to make sure that we take the time to unpack those. And there are progressions, sort of descriptors of what you can do or what does it mean to be a critical thinker that we can help students to identify. There are little cards and posters that were created in 2013 that are still on the website. They were excellent and they're still excellent, that you could use to help students unpack and understand. I've put a link in here for you that you would be able to identify in New Learn Alberta where the competency progressions were. And so let's just take you there really quickly. This is in the New Learn Alberta site. I'm taking you straight to them. And so you'll find that they are done by ages and they give you the descriptors. So here's critical thinking. It tells you basically in general terms, what does that mean? And then what are some bullets that unpack that for me? And so how does that change when I get to age 9 to 11? How does that age when I get to the next one, Division 2, Division 3, Division 4? So they were intentionally designed so that we would continuously assess students' understanding in those areas and see that they are progressing through and making gains in understanding and seeing themselves in those 8 competencies. So as you scroll through, you will see the 8 competencies listed there. All right, let's move on. there were examples that we showed as we unpacked each of the curriculums about where might I see it. Since we're unpacking math, let's have a look at and illustrate equality with equations. This comes from grade 3. And how does that fit with a competency? And that's usually what we hear from teachers is, okay, I get the competencies, but I don't really understand how that fits into what I'm teaching. So here's an example of where we're modeling things that would, or highlighting words that could be contingently linked to any one of the competencies. And remember, how you unpack your unit will have a certain focus to it. So you're going to be in a better position to say, this is not just a one-off example. This is an example I'm showing you, but how you've unpacked modeling or solving, or what activities you're giving me to solve problems. Maybe it's problem solving in this unit that is your focus. So I will only just focus on the competency of problem solving with the students and make sure they understand it. You're not doing all 8 at once. You're not doing all 8 in one assignment ever. They're never going to be really good at learning those if they have to try and navigate 8 of them in one assignment. So what is the main focus that you have? So you decide, and you've got a whole year to unpack those 8, and some of them more times than one. Other ones you're going to just have, I have a really big project they're working on, and it would really link well into this. Maybe 2 of them, but you're not doing all 8. This is an old numeracy progression. It takes those ones that you just saw vertically in the white boxes. This is the old one. It's still very much the same. So some of you might just be teaching a different grade in this K-3, but actually had this one. You could still use that if you wanted to, and it just shows the progression. So I'm going to go back to when I look at these literacy and numeracy progressions, it's the same idea. And I want students to be able to see themselves and understand what are the pieces of numeracy. So there's an awareness piece that goes with it. There's personal insights that go with it. So there's terminology that happens in the progressions for numeracy and literacy. So every teacher is a numeracy teacher. Every teacher is a literacy teacher. And it doesn't matter what you teach, whether it's art, whether it's music, whether it's language arts, whether it's math. You are always on the lookout to see how you integrate those and helping students move forward. So the terminology suggested through numeracy and literacy progressions is also explained for you here in the New Learn Alberta site. So again, if you're not familiar with them, take a little bit of time to have a look at them. They progress by age. It's not a grade thing, it's an age thing. And some students will not necessarily, because they're age 6, be out of this, and some of them will be age 5 and already beyond that. So again, we know that each of us think differently, grow differently. So here's an example of a numeracy link from a grade 2 math. So I see time, standard units, measurement, relationship, standard units, time. All of those are numeracy relationships that could relate to time, measurement, patterns and relation, units of measure, interpretation, representation. So there's connections that fit throughout all of these, and you will find them in all of your grades in each of the subjects that you, or organizing ideas that you unpack. There are literacy progressions just like in the numeracy, and they're unpacked for you again in the New Learn Alberta site. So I won't go for this one. So I identified the same way with the white boxes. So here again is an example for you. If I'm going to collect information, I'm going to answer questions. That's all part of literacy. I can't do a good job of that if I don't have some literacy skills. And so how does that fit into the numeracy and the math that we teach? So those are the connecting pieces. Okay, and those aren't new. Remember, those are not new. Now, I am going to just briefly take you to the New Learn Alberta site, because one of the things that we also heard loud and clear from teachers was, I didn't know that competencies existed. Okay, well now we do. So let's pick up on them. We know that they're there. And then the next question is, but I have really no idea how to, I don't even know where to start to find which one might fit. So I gave examples. They said good examples, but they're your examples, but not everything's going to fit your example. And that's true. So Learn Alberta has done this work for you. So I want to just show you where they are. So again, we'll just spend very little time in going here, but just so that you're familiar with it and can go back and locate it, that'll be the important piece. So if I go into this site here, this is your blue one for curriculum. We won't go through all the other ones right now. So just an FYI, there's 2 places for curriculum. The big document that we were looking at that had all of the grades sort of sitting side by side is down here called printable curriculum. So if you want that one, click that one on. Otherwise, we're going to stay up here, and it always comes into one that's a little bit more isolated to my grade. So let's go to mathematics. I'm going to choose, I'll just pick one at random, grade 1. Could be any one of them. And depending on the size of your screen, it adjusts for the size of the screen that you're working on. I see grade 1 and grade 2. You might only see grade 1. But nonetheless, that's not important at this point. What you're going to see that comes up here, again, is in the order, just as it appeared in that large brown document, the order that it appears that Alberta Education put the outcomes in. This is what you're seeing here. It's just been pulled apart into individual boxes. All right, so the organizing idea about quantity is right here. And here's in kindergarten grade 1, my guiding question that says, how can quantity be communicated? And the very first learner outcome, so 1N1, in this case it's up 1.1 because there's more than one row. Here is my learner outcome. Now I just want you to watch the screen very carefully. Again, watch my cursor. When it came down and hit the learner outcome, notice it had a green box around it. 98% of them will do that. That means it has lots of work that's been done behind the scenes, and that's good. And it's already unpacked for me. So I'm going to go to this little circle with the eye on it. And what it does now is it says, aha, you only want that one learner outcome. You don't want anything else up on your screen. You just want to focus on that. And it says students interpret and explain quantity to 100. That's their first learner outcome. All the organizing idea is the same, guiding question is still there, but this is the only outcome I want to focus on. So everything else disappeared. But if you look at the bottom, you have a menu, and the menu is now going to tailor the competencies, the literacy progressions, the numeracy progressions, specifically to the outcome that you selected. So you pick any other one in the grade, it'll do exactly the same thing. So I'm not going to go to the cusps because we already looked at where I find the cusps. But let's look at the competency progressions. Remember those 8 competencies. So students interpret and explain quantities to 100. Well, they're saying in Division 1, you might want to consider critical thinking, problem solving, management and information, innovation, communication, and that's it. Not all 8 are listed there. So they're saying typically in that learner outcome, any one of those 5, one, not all of them, would fit with what you might be doing in a particular activity or whatever. They fit well with that learner outcome. Now, again, I'm going to qualify. Depending on how you set your unit up, maybe you've got different activities that one of the other 3 that aren't listed fits, and that's fine. You choose that one. So again, you have choice, but this does give you a little bit of guidance, and you don't have to be sort of left to your own devices to figure out, what do I do? Where could I go? What might link to it? So always come here and have a look if you're not sure what you want to link it to. Same thing with the literacy and the numeracy progressions. I'll just do literacy. What literacy boxes that you showed me in that whole rubric fit with students' unidentified quantity to 100? Like, what am I supposed to consider there? So again, read through these and it gives you some guidance as to where you will be. Right, so the work has been done for you, and that's really helpful. I mean, to me, that's a big piece that we want to make sure that we're doing. And if we're supposed to do it, what help do I have to get there? Okay, let's go back. So the second document I want to share with you is what we call the curriculum comparison document. So again, I'm teaching in K3, but I've taught K all my life, and all of a sudden I've been assigned to 3 in the new curriculum, and I don't know what that looks like, and I don't even know how it changed. So what we have here, and I'll share this with you in just a second again, so it'll be easier for you to read, and I'll share one specific to each of your grades. So you will go in and pick the one that you want. So at the top, you will see a legend. Remember I said N stood for number. So the legend will change as soon as I change the organizing idea. So once I go from number to geometry, then I have to have a different way, and that means I'm going to have a different letter, and it will be G, okay? T for time, so on. So as I change the organizing idea, I will change the letter that shows up in the numbering system, and you'll see it right with the learner outcome. Again, if it was the first learner outcome in geometry that showed up, it'll have a 1. If it was the second one, if there's 2 of them, then it'll have a 2, and so on. If it has more one row cusp, it'll have a decimal. This document is read sort of the following ways. The left-hand column, we use the old language, is the old number strand. So we went through and had a look at what in the old curriculum in this grade, in this case it was kindergarten, fits with the new curriculum. So we were looking for what is still the same and then what is different. Is there something that launched in that was completely new? Or is it something that we dropped and you had it, but you won't see it again, etc. So in this column is old curriculum, language you're probably familiar with. In this one, and this one, and this one, these are all new. So 3 columns, just like we had the cusp before, but what you will see is this one is the understanding. So when we went through and did the work with the teachers, we had teams of teachers that worked with us, we actually found the understanding was easier to use to match and get an identification of what did we used to do and kind of what are we being asked to do now. So the understanding is what we used as our first match is yes, it fits, no, it doesn't fit. And then we further unpack the understanding by clarifying with the knowledge and the knowledge and skills and procedures and the learner outcome. Do those fit still with what we had here? So this was our first round or level of match. We verified we had a good match by looking at the remaining pieces, the learning outcome, and then the knowledge and skills and procedures. If it was a pretty close match, yes, the language might look different, the words might read different, but if the intent was the same, you won't see any highlights. And you'll see right here on this page, I don't see a lot of highlights. Yeah, the wording is a little bit different, but the intent of what we used to do and what is expected of us is pretty similar. So it's really the same. If there's a lot of highlights, you'll see here it says, if there is highlights, that means that's new to the curriculum. So let's look at another example. Here I had specific learner outcome number 5 in my old curriculum. It fits with these understandings that are sitting here and this learner outcome, these two to go together. And in the skills and procedures, very similar to stuff I used to do. But then I also see that I see the words enough and not enough as a comparative language piece that was added in. So the intent is very much the same as what I've always done. I'm just going to add in a few more comparative language pieces that the students are going to be aware of as we look at numerous math pieces and collections. And that's how it works, that when you see yellow, those are new to the grade. Now, sometimes new to the grade could be because we moved something from a previous grade down, which would mean the whole thing is new, and you'll see lots of yellow. That's not to panic. That doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do this. The answer is, of course we can. We can do it. We just do it in small chunks. We have to bridge, make sure the students understand the previous level that they needed to in order to access gain into mine. So that's how you read the curriculum comparison document. They are still, based on the numbered outcomes. So we're using the numbered outcomes all the way through. So that's the one thing that we did consistently in the key documents that we're sharing with you is we continue to use the numbered outcomes document. We have a couple of universities, a polytechnic, that are using those, and a number of school boards have just adopted them for the same reason. It's just easy for them to reference. But again, the choice is yours. As we change the particular organizing idea, the color will change according to that legend that's at the top. So you see that each number or organizing idea got their own color. Number is a pink, blue is a pattern, sort of a magenta color is measurement, time is green, geometry has got kind of a purple color to it. So they each have their own color. And we also color coded it for another reason, not only to just make it draw attention to the fact that we've changed, but we use the same color in our last document. So that's where they all link together. So when you're doing these documents, we kind of think that there is a progression to learn them and just wrap your head around them is numbered outcomes document, curriculum comparison, followed by the last one, which will be our sample year plan. Okay, so here's the curriculum comparison for grade 3. I see grade 3, I see number, I see an example of 1.2, So we use the numbered outcomes document. Grade 3 has more that shows up. They have algebra in theirs. They don't have coordinate geometry, but this shows up in grades 5 and 6. So you're seeing, again, the legend and the color that fits with each one. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to grab these links and I'm going to put them in the chat box. So what I'd like you to do, whoops, sorry, let me grab the link here, is once you get them in the chat box, just click on the one that works for you and save it to your computer and then bring it up and have a look. That way too, I know that everybody can get in there. Okay, they should be there, so grab them. And if you teach multiple grades, then grab multiple ones. That's entirely up to you. So again, I'm going to keep going just so that we have time at the end to answer any questions. So that one, I want you to spend some time looking at it. Just really remember, left side is old, right side, 3 columns are new. But the understanding lives first. It's not the middle column for that one, just because we use that to transition from old to new. Yellow is new to your grade and gives you just an indicator of things that I should maybe be aware of, that maybe they don't know that from the old curriculum coming to me. So I might need to do a little bit of bridging there. Okay, assuming that I'm not seeing anything in the chat box, everybody got it to open. So let's do our last document that is sort of the 3 key pieces. And that's what we call the sample year plan. And it's exactly that, it's a sample. You're not obliged to doing this order, but in this particular plan, what we did is we accounted for bridging. We accounted for maybe they need a little bit of help because they haven't done this. And we also accounted for you don't do something to 100 on day 1. Maybe I need to just practice if I'm a grade 1 teacher. Did they really get 1 to 10 nailed in kindergarten well, so that I'm ready to proceed with where I'm starting in my grade, which you would do inherently anyway, is that preview review kind of skill. So again, these are samples, but they will scaffold the entire curriculum for you throughout the year. At the beginning of this is where you will find that new front matters. So when you get your grades document, remember, it doesn't matter which grade you are, their front matter is always the same. Maybe take a minute or two if you've never read the introduction, which replaces our front matter in the old. Do that so that you have a good sense of what the expectation and sort of the flow and philosophy is of the new curriculum. So let's have a look at how this works. Each of you, when you get these documents, will have a this is a grade 1, will have a document that is broken into months. And what I actually did when I cut and pasted these together is I used a template that Edmonton Public had created when the province was on COVID, and they had so graciously shared all of those modules. One of the things that they shared with you was sort of a week at a glance to show you where you were going to be going. And we had very little questions about how to navigate that. People were able to get in there and figure it out really quickly. And because there was such an ease, and we knew that we were going to be sharing out documents, not everyone's going to be coming to a PD. So what would be an easy way for them to get sort of a plan that might work by months, but also sort of scaffold the learning as we go through? So we used their template and just sort of gutted it, kept the headers in there, and are using the same idea. So remember your colors, and you'll learn them quickly if you're using this. Pink is number. We would expect number to be pretty big because number is a huge component in the primary anyway. So what you're seeing here is the learner outcomes. Students interpret and explain quantities to 100. Remember, the learner outcome doesn't change. The number might refer a different cusp, and that's what the 0.2 is telling me. This is from the second row of cusps. The bullets, you should make a note, the bullets are the understandings. It's not the end all be all, this is all I have to teach. And this is why we said always have that big document with your numbered outcomes sitting beside you so that we can reference back and forth and really dig down into what do I need to teach for knowledge? What are the skills and procedures that I need to make sure I'm covering and integrating to cover that understanding? So these are the understandings in all of these. Every one of them is the understanding. And then we will go back and look at what the knowledge, skills, and procedures are. So as we worked with pilot teachers, we said, in a real world, you're not starting at 100 on day one. So where are you starting? Now, in the new curriculum, they're going up to 10 already. So they're doing numbers up to 10, basic addition up to 10 is happening for in a selected ways that we're doing it. So they said, well, we would probably review 10 for sure, the counting, and make sure that everyone's got that strongly already done. And then we would probably target to 20 as we would have in the older curriculum if we're counting to 20. Remember, now I'm counting to 100. I am not going to be in any way, shape, or form expecting them to add to 100. Okay, that's where that document we have to have back and forth and read. So as I'm going through those pieces, I'm going to be looking, and you'll see that it says to 20, and then it goes to 50. So the teachers were saying, we're going to scaffold our targets. I'm going to do the outcomes. I'm going to revisit the outcomes over and over and over again. I'm going to review those outcomes, and I'm just going to target a new number. So you are really going to do a lot of spiraling around. It's just your end goal will be a little bit different. And I'm not just going to do 1 and 1.2, and that's it. As you know, in primary, you pull in so many different things happening at the same time. So they said we'd also be working on 1.3. We'd also be working on 1.1. We'd also be working on 1.5. They didn't do 1.4 right away. Notice it doesn't come in till November. And these aren't in any particular order, but what I'm trying to say is that we're going to be doing multiple things, because if I'm counting things, sometimes patterns come into that right away. You see patterns. I can count, but I can also talk about patterning at the same time. I can also talk about whether 2 bears and 2 markers still represent the same amount. So I could get that sense of equality happening at the same time. So you're always doing different things. You're never in primary just looking at one outcome. So we are working towards the things that are in yellow. Sometimes you're going to have students that are ready to move on to 20 before September, October. You're going to keep moving them forward as you see fit. You're going to know best as judgment in the classroom. Equally, we had some teachers who said at the end of October, my kiddos are not ready in any way, shape, or form to start going to 50. And we said, okay, well, 50 also goes into December and January. This is not just for November. But we said, then scaffold it accordingly. So some of them said, I might just for November go to 30, or I might target 35, or I've got a group that's at 30, but I also have a group that's at 40. And of course, you scaffold as you go anyway. So those are suggestions that we can start to move the students through to get to our end goals of where we want to go. When we do our PDs, we are using the year at a glance, or the sample year plan. Again, just because we do a PD and we follow this order doesn't mean that you can't change the order because you want to do it differently. You can still come to PDs, you still get the resources, and you just integrate them at the point that you're ready. All right. So the year plan, lots of people are using it. Some people said, I'm going to change the order slightly. Fine. Some said, I don't want to do that at all. I want to do it differently. Fine. Again, that's always your call, but it's just a sample. And that's what it is, to help scaffold the learning as we go through. So what else is happening in September? Well, patterning, because teachers said, I'm counting, I do patterning right up. We had a big debate about it, and especially in K1-2. Some said I do it day 1, and some said I don't do it until the end of the first month. So again, there's some flexibility built into this, but we put it in because the majority of the teachers said, no, I do it right from day 1. So we put it in. Time is one of those ones where they said, Chris, just put it all the way through the year, because we would do calendar at carpet time. We do counting at carpet time. We do patterning at carpet time, because we're using the calendars. We're learning about the days of the week, all part of what we're unpacking in different components of the math, also part of time. And so they said we would do that every day. So we don't actually identify it individually and just say you would finish this at some point because you are doing it. So that's why we just highlighted it as these are all done as ongoing. And so that's how you can interpret that. You'll see that nothing happens in measurement because they said, no, we won't be starting that right off the bat. Some teachers said, I usually do. Most of them said we don't. So we went with the majority, and because we had a great group, a large group that gave us feedback, we started with them. So it's your peers that kind of helped us work our way through. We refined it. I will be honest, last year we made some tweaks to this document. So you've got the most recent version. Because there were things that after the first year we said, you know what, that was a lot longer than we thought. We need to change our end goal. Or, wow, you know, even without knowing the new curriculum and having any bridging, they were able to handle this. So we changed it again. So there's been tweaks made along the way. Again, you can tweak as you go. Then you see that we're already into December, January, and February. So some of those outcomes are still sitting there because we're now moving to 50. See that in January, the suggestion was that's where we start for 100. That's our target. You're not at 100 in January, but you're already moving now beyond 50, moving towards 100, and you've got that ever half of the year to solidify their learning so that when you assess them at the end of the year, you're assessing them on your grades outcome. So that's how this document works. We have the at the bottom of the screen, again, I put the legend down there if it's easier for you to see than what we had before so that you get the idea of how the colors work. We also used money all the way through. Money was contingent on everything we did, counters, identification, patterning. I could go nickel, dime, nickel, dime, nickel, dime, right? Leverage the money as much as you can to get that going. All right, kindergarten teachers, I'm going to put your link in and then I'll go to the next slide here and grab the ones for the grade 1s, 2s, and 3s. So again, grab the one that you need from the chat box. Whoops, my mistake. I'll go back. I want to copy, not paste. Okay, kindergartens are in there. And let me go one step further. And I'll grab these ones. And again, grab whichever one is yours and just save it to your computer. When you get a copy of the slide deck, all of these will be PDF'd, but the links are active. So if you needed a link or lost it again or whatever, you'll be able to get it through here. So that's not a problem. So I hope that that makes sense to you, kind of how we unpacked it and what's available to you. Okay, now, because we have already unpacked the whole year, so we've done round 1 of getting the teachers started of how do I teach the new K-3 curriculum. So that happened last year where we intentionally followed our year plan and we did 2 months at a time. And so we unpacked 2 months at a time, gave them ideas, showed them how we would use money, showed them what other resources I might use, gave them links, anything that we could do to help navigate the pieces that we identified in the months of September, October as being kind of key that we would do. And then we just kept building on that, gave them more resources, came back, okay, now what did we say we were going to do for December, January? Okay, those types of things. So that work has been done and it's in sessions 1 to 5 found on the ARPD site. I'm going to take you there right away, but I also want to show you some other things that you'll be able to find there as well. So the sessions, you're looking for sessions 1 to 5 for each of your grades, K-3. They are posted and you would start at session 1, which was done in August. So at this time of the year is when we met with the teachers. Sometimes we actually met with them in June. And we unpacked, how do I teach September, October? And then sort of mid-October, we had our next session and we looked at how do I unpack the next 2 months. So we always tried to stay ahead of it so that you were entering the new month and already had the tools or whatever you might need or ideas that you're going to float around to work with. So let's go there. And when you come to the new Learn Alberta site, or sorry, not New Learn, ARPDC site, You have this bar at the top. Go to new curriculum and select mathematics. You can also do it from the picture that's down here. It would achieve exactly the same thing. And it will be important for you to link the grade that you want to work in. Okay, that will save you a lot of scrolling and looking. We are in the process right now of changing how things are showing up here because they're kind of scattered around and people are finding it difficult to locate their specific item that they're looking for. But part of it is if you locate what it is you're looking by grade, then I can really narrow down what it is I want. So I put in grade 1, I'm in math, and you see that everything that comes up now will be specific to grade 1. So here I see my year sample plan that we just looked at. Here I see planning, and so this is session 5. So they're not put in order yet, but they're all pretty close together. So you'll see that session 5 was how am I unpacking grade 1 math for April to June? So you can go through this, you can go in and watch the recording. If there's any resources that were shared with the teachers, they will be linked in here. They're always below the recording, so you can go in, click them on, save them to your drive, use whatever you'd like. So in here, I will have all kinds of pieces. I have those 4 sessions, here's session 4 and so on. You also have this thing called a sample math kit. So as we were working for the resources in, or teaching the pilot teachers, they said, you know what, it would have been really helpful if we just did know upfront all the kinds of little things that they might need. And I was actually co-teaching in a grade 3 class. So at that time, the grade 3 teacher and I had actually come to the same conclusion. It would have been nice if we had a little kit for each of them rather than giving them money every day. If we just had everything that they needed just to pull out of their desk and here's what they needed. So we created a video for you for kits. They're sample, you don't have to have them, but anything that we put in the kit is in the video and the slide deck. If there's anything that I developed that we put in, like we created cards that have words on them, sometimes pictures on them. Sometimes we showed how much money did we put in the Ziploc bag for each child. All of that is outlined for you in the video and in the slide deck below. And below the slide deck are any things that were developed in Word documents that you can just download and photocopy to your heart's content. So you could even just take what we put in there that was reproduced and just use that. You don't have to build a kit. That's entirely up to you. So there are kits made for math from K to 3. There has been a request for 4 to 6, so we're in the process of getting that done. And it's a little bit less so needed than I think in K to 3 because there were some significant changes and things we can do. But certainly money from a base 10 perspective in grade 4, 5, 6 is super huge and definitely an area that we want. So we may look at building those. So you simply need to go through here. You'll see that the sessions are numbered. There is a session called part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. Those are not the recordings. Those are actually just the different sheets that I just gave you, the numbered outcomes document, the curriculum comparison. They were broken down in a sort of a spreadsheet that somebody had created and put in here. So don't confuse those. Always just look for the session numbers as we're unpacking them. There's this definition for verbs if you're struggling to how to figure out what does it mean to relate? What does it mean to represent? So that's been posted for all of the grades in there as well. Here's your session 1. So if I want to know what I should do for September, October, go right in here and click it on and we get some ideas from there. Maybe that will help out. Okay, so that's one place that you're going to go. Again, there'll be all kinds of different documents that you'll be able to access as you're going through finding these pieces. Resource type is another way that you can find it. So a year at a glance numbered outcomes, they will start to be hyperlinked directly to here. So if I were to click on year at a glance, it'll bring up every grade's year at a glance. You would click on the grade that you want. There's another one called curriculum support. These are going to come out to you as of Monday. I am going to show you what they look like so that you have a sense, but you won't get them shared to you. I'm going to have to fix that because that doesn't need to be there. I will share these, a copy of this with you, but I just wanted you to know that they're there. That's where you would find them. That'll be the fastest way to find them is go to curriculum support, find your grade, and then click on what's already been posted. So again, because we don't have an approved learning resource, there's been lots of questions asked about, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to find it. I don't know what it's going to look like. So let me share with you one of these here. Oh, sorry, that's not what I want. Let me go back here. Sorry, guys. That's the one I want. And I'll make this larger so you can see it as soon as it's loaded. So what we did is we created for every grade, K-3 is pretty much done. So I just want you to know that they won't all show up Monday morning, but majority of them will. Let's just take an example. So for grade 3 number, there are 4 different learner outcomes in number in grade 3. In grade 1, grade 2, they have multiple different learner outcomes. Some of them only have one, like geometry. So in this case, I'm looking at grade 3, number 3, and what we did is by the learner outcome in each of the grades created a document. So every document will look the same. I just want you to know what's in the document. It'll be the same for your grade. So at the top, we've already hyperlinked for you the competency progressions, literacy progressions, numeracy progressions, okay? All of those, just like I showed you, will take you right to where I showed you. We have what we call planners. So we started them in science and they were so well received by the teachers. They're saying, make them for math. So Ted Zeroni has made them for math. We've got them ready for K-3. They'll be put in. And what it is, it's a one-stop shop. So it doesn't matter which one you open in your grade. It will have every organizing idea built as a drop-down menu. It will have all of your CUSPs linked in there, learner outcomes. It'll have everything that you need to build a lesson or to build a unit, your choice. There's a place for you to save existing lesson plans that you want to hyperlink into there. There's a place for you to build your assessments in it. So it could be a one-stop shop for you to build a unit or for you to build your lessons. You'll have to see it. There will be a video attached to it. So once you go in here on Monday, there'll be a link and a video, and Ted will take you through to show you how to use it. The interactive concept, skills, and number outcomes. So the numbered outcomes document that I shared with you has also been created as an interactive document, and that will be hyperlinked here. What that means is if you look at that, just bring up, as I'm talking, bring up your numbered outcomes document, doesn't matter what grade you look at. Look at any one of your knowledge columns. There's things like quantity, integer, addition. Like, what if I've never had to explain that to a student before? Because a book has always kind of given me an example. So in the interactive one, you'll be able to click those words on. They're hyperlinked to a definition that maybe was already done by Alberta Education, or linked to one that's done on New Learn Alberta, or linked to one that has a reputable source that we've been using. So you will have those hyperlinked for you. Sometimes even an example comes up that you can show the kids. Sometimes even an activity or lesson plan will come up behind it. The same has been done with the verbs. So all of your skills are already hyperlinked to that document that I just showed you. They'll bring it up. They'll show you an exemplar of what it means, how to unpack it, how might I use it, all right? So that's where you're going to find some of these. And over in the very right-hand corner is a quick video. It's about 10 minutes, 15 minutes long that I did just to show you how to unpack everything that's in the document so that you know what you're looking at. Because after you learn it once, every document you have will be the same. So every one of them has the organizing idea for that learner outcome, the guiding question, the learner outcome itself. We've also provided you with sample summative assessments of the learner outcome. They're not perfect. They're not always going to be a perfect site that you want to use, but when you go in and click them on, you'll have the option to download them. They will be editable for you, so you can go in and take a question out, replace it, add more in. Maybe you want to differentiate because you've got different levels in your class. So these are just samples. These, everyone, are living documents. And so the intent will be, you are going to see these change. Once a month, we will be going in and adding to documents. So you will always have to just keep checking back to see, oh, they added more summatives, or they took one away and put another one in. So how we define surface, deep, and transfer that I just touched on very early on about assessment is outlined in this quick video so that you understand, and that'll be significant in just a minute. Below that, if you have more than one cusp, you can hyperlink directly to that work just by clicking these on. So you'll know that there were 3 rows of cusps in the grade 3, number 3 outcome. Here is the first cusp. Here's the vocabulary that they need to know from the previous grade. Here are some sample student languages essential for what you're teaching now in that cusp. I know and I can statements for those of you who like to use those or use those for reporting. And then for those of you who are using the Nelson pre-assessment and leaps and bounds, I've gone in and shown you which book you should go to now. Sometimes it's not your grade anymore because things have shifted. So grade 3, here are the 3 pages that you would use for the pre-assessments. If there's a real fall down or fall apart there, then you can go into here and do the focus from leaps and bounds, all right? Below that, you have just a recovery and enhancement suggestion, and then you get to your cusp. So your cusp is the same cut and paste. The only thing that's different is we took each of the verbs and gave them their own row. So it helps for you to unpack what does it mean to compose a product using equal groups based on all the knowledge I was supposed to teach on the left-hand side. We've given you an achievement indicator. A lot of you are familiar with those, so we thought that might help. And an illustrative example column so that you can go in and just see, like, what exactly does that mean again? So give me an idea. So this will give you an idea. This will give you some ways that you might start teaching it or build it into your lesson. And you're welcome to use those in your lesson if you want. And then over in the assessment column, these are formatives, right? They're touch bases. Surface would mean I just taught it to you today. I want to see if you understood what I did today. That's the surface part. The deep is we've done a couple of this now. Now we're going to start relating things together and doing a little bit of an application. So that's what we identified as deep. Again, these you can add to these, take just parts of them. They're just suggestions. They're very minor at the moment. There's going to be a lot more added. So you have to keep checking back to these documents. And it proceeds like that for all the way through your cusp. You have different illustrative examples, different assessments, yada, yada, yada. And I think most people that we've shown this to love that part of it, all right? Because it just gives you a kickstart to where I'm going to go. Below that is a section called resources. Mathology has already been provided in the new Learn Alberta. So we're giving you those links that are specific to the cusp. These are the newest updated version ones that we got from Pearson. Math Up, for those of you who have Math Up in your jurisdiction, these are the newest versions of those as well with the newest lessons. So these have been identified that fit to your cusp that you're working on. We've included existing books in your schools. A lot of you have Math Focus or Math Makes Sense in the elementary. So how could I use those to leverage into the new curriculum? So again, I've linked what the units are to those for you so that you've had lots of colleagues working on this behind the scenes for you. So they've done a ton of work. These NCETM ones are from the United Kingdom. So we learned very early on that they had a curriculum very similar to ours, and they had done a tremendous amount of work, just amazing what the ministry there had created for the teachers for resource support. So we asked for permission to use these. I'm going to share this with you so that you know what you're looking for in your grade. And basically what you will get is something that like this that comes up. The teaching points are just a quick summary of what covers it. So that's how we used it to find the match to what fit in each of your grades and each of your outcomes. When you come into Teacher's Guide, the Teacher's Guide is just like our illustrative examples. And in some cases, we borrowed from there. It's an entire document, 28 pages long, which teaches you how do I unpack factors? Like, what does that mean? Or what is it I'm supposed to do? So you'll see other representations. You will see assessment questions in here that you could use. So it's a great tool. I absolutely love it. They also created for the teachers PowerPoints that fit with each of the points that you're going to teach the students. So you have the rights to download those and use them at any time. Okay, I won't open this one up right now, but you can download them, you can add to them because again, they're editable with permission from the UK. So we've been allowed to use the materials that are in there. You also have other websites we found that fit that would help you. We have working Karen Bloomhagen. She works with Explore Learning. She has gone in and tied in any of the gizmos that are on New Learn Alberta site and any that live on the ExploreNet Learning site that fit to what you're doing. And if you haven't done ExploreNet Learning, or sorry, gizmos before, you really need to make sure that you go through them. They're excellent activities that link directly to your cusps, would replace an entire worksheet. I'm hoping we're not just doing worksheets, but would replace that kind of an activity, deep learning, and start getting them to connect. So great transfer activities in there. And then you also have in this additional pieces, these are coming. We have a team that will be working in September to further link lessons for you for your Indigenous connections to your cusps. And there's an entire problem solving section as well that will be linked in. So these are why I'm saying they're not going to be perfect for you, but there's enough here to certainly give you a lot of get going stuff. But keep checking back, always go back. So it'll go like this all the way through. For every row of cusps you will have a whole new set that looks just like this, and you will unpack it until you get down to the bottom. And at the very, very bottom of every grade where we have time, we have included for you and the librarians, what books have we found that fit directly to your cusp? So that maybe these are in your library, so now the librarians can go through and tag it to fit with each of the grades now to what it belongs to. Or if they're looking to buy some books, then again, or if you're looking to buy some books. So it's a labor of love. I will tell you, the people that are working behind the scenes to get this happening to you are all across the province. There are people from pretty much every school board. Not always a ton, but lots of people who have lent their hands, their minds, their time, and a lot of it, their own time, has gone into putting this together. So I think they'll be appreciated. I do believe that, but I do think that to be patient with us. If they're not all posted on Monday morning, they are coming, and they will be coming for math. They will be coming for science. So some science will be posted as well. There'll be some new number put up for 4 to 6. We're not as far for 4 to 6 because we're just starting to do the unpacking with the teachers on those. And then we likely will have some coming up very quickly for LA as well. So I hope that that's given you a good start. I have all of your emails for everyone who is registered. So I will send you a copy of the slide deck with probably in the next 10 or 15 minutes. You'll get a copy of that in your email. But the posting of the recording will go directly to the ARPDC site, and you can watch it there again at any time if you want. So I'm going to just open the floor. I'll stop recording because I know that not everybody likes to be recorded when they ask a question. So just let me turn that off. If it lets me in, there we go. Oops, come on.